Hey, Mr. Lambert.
Yes,
My name's wasn't on the list again today.
I know. I'll get you in there though, Caden. Trust
All
me.
right, that's all right. I just wanted to remind you.
Nope. I'm in the middle of proposing 3 new programs for my department, and it's just taken up all of my time outside of this because I have to send documents to the state plus documents to the university, and it's just, yeah.
That's understandable. Sounds like you're in the same
Well,
boat as
that's
we are.
my side. You guys don't whine with all the homework you have, so I don't know that I have any right to be complaining on my end.
Oh, I bitch a lot.
Fair enough. All right, so let's see. Okay. So can everybody see the questions, and can everybody see the list of names?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Winter, are you with us today?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Can I do number 19?
Number 19?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
So it says, which of the following statements holds true to the concept of duty to honesty? And I said B. It refers to the duty to tell the truth and not leave anything important out.
Okay, so how would okay, so we look at the concept of duty to honesty, and telling the truth seems to make sense, right? Why would they have the addition of not leaving important things out? Why would that be an important addition or clarification?
Because you can okay, so you can technically not be lying if you say some of the truth, but that's kind of like still not necessarily the right way to go about doing things. Like, it's important to leave important things in and not just overlook them when do you know what I mean?
I do, Sam.
So when you leave out details, you're actively being deceitful. For example, if I were to be in a fight and I said, he hit me, but then I don't include the fact that I hit him first or other details.
Yep.
Yeah, I never lied, but I'm being deceitful. I'm trying to deceive the way that situation goes down. A lot of details.
Okay, so the duty to honesty is not just telling the truth. It's it's the same reason why when we go on the witness stand and we're being sworn in to testify in a trial, it says, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth. That's what duty to honesty is talking about. It's not just telling the truth, it's telling the whole truth. Excellent. Okay, thank you, Winter. All right, Tanner, what do you got for us?
Let's do number 2.
Number 2.
Traditionally, focusing on means instead of ends leads to an ethics based on duties or rights. I think it's opposite. I think it's when focusing on the ends instead of the means is what leads to the ethics based on duties or rights.
Okay, what's the difference?
The difference being is what your end goal is. If you're focused on your end goal, then it's going to lead to ethical behavior. Like the prescription example it gave in the text about, like, you're at the pharmacy and this person in front of you left their prescription there. Do you take it? Because your mom needs it. Do you take it? So if you're focused on the end of helping your mom, then you're putting the ethical decision. You're put in that ethical dilemma. But if you're focused on the means instead of the end, then you're not too worried about the ethics.
I disagree with that. We can focus on ethics and focus on ends, and we can also focus on ethics and focus on means. You bring up the correct concept. When our focus is on the end, we're just looking at the outcome. And so we look at, so when we focus on ethics that focus on the outcome, we're just focused on what outcome is going to be best for everybody. It doesn't worry how we get there, it just worries what happens. Utilitarianism, for example, is a classic example of looking at the end, the most beneficial outcome for as many people as we can possibly get. Focusing on the means says how I do something is as important as what actually happens. So the idea of duties or rights is focusing on how we do things. Okay, so this statement is actually going to be true.
Okay.
So the idea of rights is I don't care what the outcome is. So I'm going to use an example, and just because it's the first idea that comes to mind. And please don't take this as a political. Do you guys understand what I mean when I say these kinds of things?
Yeah.
You can totally disagree with what I'm about to say, and I will not hold that against you. This is just the first idea that comes to mind.
Yeah, you're good.
Focus on means rather than ends might be the example of the Second Amendment. My right to bear arms is so important, the means, that I'm concerned about the outcome of how weapons are used, but I'm arguing that in the face of mass shootings that we've seen, those would be considered ends. My right to bear arms cannot be or should not be infringed. That's a means. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense now.
So my right is more important, protecting my right to bear arms is more important than how sometimes those weapons get used. That's an end. If I was talking about guns and I was focused on the end of preventing mass shootings, a very logical argument would be, let's ban guns completely. Right? Regardless of what possible implications might come from that act. But the idea of saying the means, how we do it is as important as what happens, tends to be a focus on duties or rights, what you're supposed to do. Even if it ends up being bad for you, your duty outweighs the negative impact. Okay, everyone with me?
Yeah.
And I will tell you right now, the argument I just made about guns is a very hasty generalization that I have not thought out. So please don't sit there and say, well, Mr. Lambert, you're ignoring ABC. I know that I am. But I just think that it makes sense. My right to do this outweighs other things. Sam?
When I read that section, I was thinking of when you get the dilemma, should I steal to feed my family? Then the other side of the argument is, why didn't you ask people for food to feed their family? So the means are different, but the outcome's the same. You're feeding the family. I'm feeding the family,
But my right, yeah, that's an end. And my end of feeding my family justifies any action I take. If my focus is on the means by which I do it, I tend to focus on rights or duties. Okay? All right. Thanks, Tanner. Okay, Jack, you with us today?
I am.
All right.
Can I'll answer number 23.
Number 23.
It says, which of the following statements holds true for the concept of fairness? And I believe that's E, which it refers to the duty to treat equals equally and unequals unequally.
Okay. Now, let's talk about that one for a minute, because it seems a little bit strange and a little bit kind of contradictory, especially the last phrase. So can you kind of put that into different language for us?
Yeah, so one of the examples the book gave that made it help make it make sense to me was, say you're a business and you have to conduct layoffs. So the way you decide to go about doing that is you'll say, well, people who have been with the company since day one, they've been here for 10 years, all of those guys are going to be safe because they're all kind of in the same group.
Okay.
But all these new guys, they're not safe. And I'm going to lay off from this group of people. But then you can't be like, well, except for Rick, because he's been here 10 years, but I don't like Rick at all. So I'm just going to lump him in with this other group and lay him off anyway. That would not work fairly.
All right. I think it's the term that we should treat unequals unequally. In our normal language, that sounds really strange. But what we're saying is people that have all of the same things in common should all be treated the same. But if people do not have things in common, they should not be treated the same. Unequal should be treated unequally. I should give attention. Jack is a great example. If I've been there a long time, my seniority should count more than somebody who just started the job, unless, what might be a reason why somebody who is a recent hire be treated differently than all recent hires and
Maybe
still be
nepotism.
fair? What's that?
Could be nepotism, like it's your nephew or something like that.
Yeah, but that wouldn't fit the concept of fairness.
Would it have to do with qualifications for the job, like training?
Okay, so if I just hired somebody, but it just so happens they're the legal counsel for the corporation, right? And that attorney has specialized knowledge in the field of this industry, even though they're a recent hire, their qualifications, training, and experience make them different than perhaps somebody who works the front counter and doesn't require a lot of skill or experience. Okay, so I could make the argument relative value to the company as an equal rather than an unequal trait. So I could have somebody that had worked there for 25 years, but their experience did not require specialized training or education. That person could be let go more than somebody who's the only one who writes in this computer language that we need to maintain the system that we're using. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, that does.
All right. Kason, you're up next.
Okay, can I do number 25?
Number 25. Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with A. That's the more correct answer, although I think B technically falls under it as well. But
okay, well, let's take a look at this. All right, so you said
A as my primary answer, I guess.
Okay, the most correct answer, I think, I think it's B is the most correct answer in terms of the specific language of the veil of ignorance. Okay? Because the veil of ignorance is the idea that our actions should not in any way be based on the circumstances in which we find ourselves. We should erase this idea of situational ethics, which means what?
Which means that you don't treat people differently specifically on the circumstances in that moment, I guess.
So getting back to Sam's example of my family is starving, therefore I am justified in breaking into this store to get food. The rule of we should not steal, okay, is a rule that we say should exist and should operate in all circumstances. There aren't really good reasons for us to steal. Therefore, when we make our rules, we should do it without trying to game the system by saying, well, we're going to make this rule because it benefits us because of where we are right now, or who we are, or how we work. We should not know which side of the, okay, so for example, person breaks in because they are starving and their family needs to eat. Well, what if that person that's breaking in was to find out that the person on the other end, the store owner, was barely making ends meet, and the cost of me breaking the window and stealing that piece of bread to fix the window and the loss of income from that loaf of bread that was stolen is enough to put me out of business, would they still feel like it was okay to break in? Maybe, maybe not, but it would change their attitude, right? Okay, Rawls' entire argument is every time we should make a rule, we should not make that rule based on if it's going to help or hurt us. We should say, what is the best rule for any situation? And so the difference between B and A is that it's more specific to the rule of the veil of ignorance. A is a little bit more along the lines of Kant's and categorical imperative. Okay? Just because you don't get to know beforehand. That's the entire concept of the veil of ignorance. Okay?
Yeah, that makes things more clear.
Yep. All right, so let's see. Zach.
Yeah, I'll take number 57.
Oh, okay.
So the question.
Hold on just a second.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Okay, go for it.
So what are the constituents of the concept of the duty to set ourselves? The best way I can think of it is it's a lot about like self-perfection almost. So
Okay.
if I'm working a job, what I try to do, at least when I was working at the hotel that I talked about a while back, I would go around to the different employees, depending on what job I was assigned, watch how they would do it, and I would try to take the best character traits of them and make my own efficient way of doing things, trying to better myself in the sense that when it comes time for me to train somebody, I can train somebody because I've been there and done that. You know, I've tried to perfect the way I did it the best. I can, try to be more efficient in showing them the next person that's on the line to do the job how to do it the best. It's kind of how I see it.
Okay. So when we talk about constituents, we're talking about the beneficiaries. Who are going to receive the benefit if we adhere to the concept of duty to ourselves? Okay. And so you said something that was very important there. Your decisions and actions today about learning how to do your job, were they done so that you could do your job better now?
Yes, but they're also done so I can show other people. So like, I guess the constituent would be the next person that's up behind me. I can show them how to do it the most efficient way that I have found.
Yes, that's an excellent, so the constituents are not just ourselves now, that is a constituency, but it's also our future self. So when I exercise, I am first doing benefit to my body now, correct? Yes. But what else am I doing? If I do exercise today, what is going to happen to my future self?
You'll be more healthy.
I'm going to be more healthy. I'm going to prevent possible disease. I'm going to improve my overall health and my ability to do the things that I want to in the future. So when we talk about doing our duty to ourselves, it's not just ourselves now, but it's our future selves or future other people. In fact, I appreciated when you said, I learned how to do the job the best I could so that when I trained somebody in the future, I could benefit them the most from my effort today. Okay, so it's this idea that when we do our duties to ourselves, we're not just doing it now, we're doing it for the future. Okay, excellent. Okay, we're going to skip Haley. She wasn't going to be able to make it today. Scott told me he wasn't going to be able to make it. Billy, are you with us?
I am.
Okay, what do you got for us?
7.
Number 7. Okay, go for it.
Okay, so it's the duty to respect others is an obligation to treat everyone the same way. I disagree with this one. I think, like, respecting someone doesn't mean everyone has the same level of respect. It's just being respectful versus if someone is in a higher position, you will treat them differently than someone in a lower position, even if you respect them both.
Okay. I agree with that, but I think that there's another way to read this statement. Okay, Sam?
So when it's talking about respect, the way that you show respect to different individuals, especially when you go to different countries. So here it's respectful to look someone in the eyes and talk to them a certain way, shake their hand. In other countries, that's frowned upon. And so you can't show that, you can't treat them the same way you treat someone here, because then it would be disrespectful.
Okay, so for example, I have 2 teenagers. One's 15, about to turn 16, and the 15-year-old is starting driver's ed tonight. Everybody, by the way, I would strongly recommend that everyone stay away from Armstrong cars for about the next month and a half. Just FYI. No, but the thing is, my son at 16 is desperate for independence. I want to do it myself. I want to do it on my own terms. In order for me to treat him the way he wants, it's imperative that respect for him means independence. Now let's talk about my wife's great-grandmother, who is in her late 80s and is suffering from dementia. Showing respect for her is not giving her independence. Because of her current mental state, she is not capable of making good, independent decisions. It's protecting her despite her desire for that. Respect for her is protecting her by keeping her in a safe, secure environment. Okay, so the key phrase in this, the duty to respect others, is the obligation to treat everyone the same way, is very problematic. The idea of respect, in a lot of cases, is to recognize the unique aspects of that person, and that we shouldn't treat everybody the same, because nobody is the same. So we identify what respect means to a specific individual, rather than simply saying, I will treat everybody the same. Okay? My wife, for example, cannot walk without a cane. She has night blindness. Okay? So telling her, well, I'm going to let you take a walk by yourself because you want to be alone, that's not showing respect to my wife. Me saying, look, you want to go for a walk? I would love to walk with you, hold your hand while we're walking, hold a flashlight so that you can see where you're going. That's respect. If I was to do that to my son, he'd look at me like I was nuts. Okay. All right. Thank you, Billy. All right, Anthony, are you with us? Okay, Anthony, going once. Anthony, going twice. Jackson, are you with us today? Jackson, going once. Jackson, going twice. Logan, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, which one would you like to do?
Can I do number 11?
Number 11. Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna say this one is true, and I think most of this comes down to simply right and wrong, or in like more controversial decision making, it would come down to like, do positives outweigh the negatives, or vice versa.
Okay, so there are standard rules for deciding which duties should take precedence over the others. It depends on what rule system or ethical model you're taking. And I agree with that it really kind of depends a little bit. But what we strive for is to determine a standard that allows us to sleep at night. That we need to create rules for deciding. Okay, it's when we don't have rules and we allow each situation to be its own thing, what does that create? What happens when we don't have standardized rules for deciding how to do things or when to do things?
Then, I mean, there's no right decision, I guess.
That's exactly it. And the idea that there's no right decision, if I'm not consistent, then people are not going to know how to act, right? For example, most of us when we work assume that pay raises or promotions tend to reflect what? What do you normally have to do to get promotions or pay raises?
Performance, do well.
I have to have high performance. What are some other rules that might apply to pay raises or performance? Or pay raises or promotions? The time you've been there. So if I happen to give a promotion to a young woman just because she's pretty, what happens then? Or if I give a promotion to a man because he's particularly handsome or strong, what happens?
I want my raise too. I'm handsome.
Well, with that beard, yeah, you qualify as something.
Well, then the value of working there longer or putting in more work is devalued. So what's the point?
It devalues the very things that we try to emphasize because we tend to try to tie increased wages or increased benefits to actions that benefit the business. The physical appearance of somebody is not necessarily likely to do that unless I'm in very, very, very specific industries. But if I give this person a promotion because they're pretty, and then I give that one a promotion because they've been here for 20 years, and then I give this person a promotion because we're good friends and we go to the same church, it creates this sense of inconsistency and chaos that make it difficult for any work to be done because nobody can understand how to operate. Am I just supposed to try to be pretty? Do I need to go and join the same church as my boss? Do I just need to be here a long time? Should I work? That inconsistency is the death of just about any organization. Okay, thank you, Logan. All right, Sam, you're up.
59.
Number 59.
Explain the concept of fairness as Aristotle proposes it. According to Aristotle, fairness is treating equals equally and unequals unequally. So those who invest equally get an equal split. So things are the same, you should be treated the same. So if I invest $10,000 and I get $100 back from that, everybody else who invested $10,000 should get $100 back.
Yes. And if I invest $5, should I expect $100 back?
No.
No. So this idea of fairness is equals should be treated as equals, unequal should be treated unequally, based on what makes them unequal. There's a parable in the Bible where Jesus says, I hired somebody the very first hour of the day and they worked for a pay, right? And then every hour the person came back and hired more laborers. And each time he said, I will pay you the full day's wage. So then the very last people that get hired are hired an hour before the day is over. Okay, they're basically hired to just clean up after everybody. They get paid the same wage as the person who got hired at the very beginning and worked all day long. How would Aristotle respond to that example?
Well, I think the idea is, I work longer, I should be paid more. That's essentially it. I kind of brought up the hen example. I don't know if you read that, but it talks about this hen. She makes a garden and raises some wheat. And then she asks all the animals around her, hey, can I get some help? Make some bread.
No, it's not Chicken Little, but Little Red Hen.
Little red hen, right?
Yep.
It's an old story. But
it's a very old story.
The animals around her are like, no, we're not going to help you. And she grinds up the wheat, makes flour. She's like, can I get some help? No. And so when the bread's done, all these other animals are like, hey, I'll help you eat the bread. But hate to see it go to waste. He's like, no, I'm going to eat this by myself. And I think that really is the example of this fairness idea where you put in, you get out as much as you put in.
Right.
And in concept, it's not really, it's hard to determine what's fair.
Well, but that was the benefit that that was the purpose of Aristotle's argument. I treat equals equally and I treat unequals unequally, so that's what makes things fair. The more somebody is the same, the more I treat them the same. The more unequal they are, I will treat them in accordance with the difference that exists between them.
Right.
And that is a standard so that everybody understands. You can expect the same benefits as somebody else to the degree that you are alike to that person.
Right.
And so, but Aristotle's argument does not work under other ethical or moral systems, right? These are not where they're all the same. They aren't. They are fundamentally different.
Right.
And so the importance is understanding these different models and which model works best for you and the experiences that you have. Which one would be most likely to lead you to making decisions that you can live with? We can't just say, well, we're going to follow them all, because a lot of times they're contradictory. And so that was one of the reasons why we talk about this, right? So if you follow the Judeo-Christian model of what Jesus taught in the parable of the laborers, that is in complete and total opposition, right? That the person at the end of the day gets paid the same as the person at the beginning of the day. That's in total opposition to Aristotle's model of fairness. Okay? Is that okay? Sure it is. But we've got to recognize these models are different, and we have to be willing to live in accordance with the model that we choose. And part of that is that if we choose the model, we accept the consequences that come with it. Okay? Aristotle's model is great if you're equal to the benefits that you're looking to get. Okay? The parable of the laborers is great if you're one of those laborers at the end. But you can't say, well, I want to have Aristotle's model, but get the laborer's benefits, or vice versa. Okay? All right. Let's see, Megan. Are you with us? Megan going once. Megan going twice. Okay. Mr. Beard. That's Kyle, by the way.
Okay. Has 56 been done? I can't tell.
56 is open.
It says explain the concept of perennial duties. We've kind of already gone over it a little bit, but it's the basic obligations we have as human beings and the fundamental rules telling us how we should act. And if we, the book says, if we embrace these obligations in difficult situations, we'll likely make morally respectable decisions all the time.
Okay, so when we talk about perennials, we normally think, or at least I do, I think of plants, right? And plants tend to fall into, especially flowers, fall into one of two groups, perennials and annuals. Okay, so can somebody tell me what an annual flower is or an annual plant?
Every year.
You plant it and it comes back every year. No, annuals, you plant it and it lives that year and then dies.
Yeah,
so
perennials are the ones that you plant once and done. I just did this weekend.
Perennials are the ones perennials are the one you plant it. Okay, so am I wrong on this, Tanner? Perennial, I plant it and it comes back every year, or is that an annual?
That's an annual. Perennials live on for 3 years or longer, technically.
Okay, yeah, the perennial keeps coming back. Annuals, you kind of have to replace them every year.
Yeah, it's like tulips and daisies, like those with bulbs come back every year for so long.
And so those are perennial, and that idea means it's ongoing. So can you give me an idea of an example of a perennial duty?
What was that? Excuse me?
Can you give me an idea of, give me an example of a perennial duty?
For some reason, I keep thinking of like stuff like love thy neighbor, or, I don't know, treat everyone with respect kind of deal. But yeah, I guess that's
the idea of, okay, so let's take, for example, the idea of treating
like existing, I guess, to me.
What's that?
I guess the idea of always existing comes to mind for me.
Yes, these are rules that should always be in place. They are not just something I do it once and I'm done. I'm expected to do it all the time.
Right, yeah.
The perennial duty of being dressed in clothing when I leave the house. There is no time where I should wake up and just say, you know what, today's going to be a clothing optional day. That might work if I'm in the house, but it should never be an outside day on a clothes optional day.
Tell that to my kids.
This is for the benefit and protection of everybody else, right? And so the idea that I should act that way all the time, so that even though it's super, super hot outside and it's really uncomfortable, I will already know I have to wear clothes if I go outside.
Yep.
Okay? And so the entire idea of the perennial duty is we accept that there are some duties that never end. That I don't have to do this until, and that at this point I don't have to do it anymore. Okay? So for example, a perennial duty that we in the United States have accepted is the concept of property tax. The idea that property tax is assessed on every single piece of property for a specific reason, right? Property taxes pay for local activities. Whether or not you agree with the amount, Totally different discussion, right? But the idea of property tax is applied to anyone that owns property. Much of our property tax goes to fund schools. Even though I don't have kids in elementary school, I still pay property tax to pay for education. My parents, who haven't had kids in the home for almost 40 years, still pay property tax because it's a perennial duty. We agree that education is important enough that even if we're not deriving any specific personal benefit from it, we pay into it because we recognize that the overall outcome that comes from that is important, valuable, and good. Okay. Excellent. All right, Porter. Porter, are you with us? Porter going once. Porter going twice. Okay, Anthony, I saw that you had popped in. I don't think you were there when I called your name last time, were you?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, let's have you go then.
All right, I would like to do number 42, if that one is still available.
Number 42, go for it. Take me a second to
number
get
42 says, hold on, I'm just gonna wait till you. It says, Arif, who is a Muslim, prays 5 times a day. At least 2 of these prayer sessions occur during work hours. Arif requests that his breaks be scheduled such that he can pray at the appropriate times. His supervisor refuses. Arif's request would not be costly, inefficient, unsafe, or negatively impact his coworkers' rights. Which right belonging to Arif is potentially being violated in this example? And that's right to religious expression, because if he requests these break times, but they don't grant them to him, then it is against his right to be praying because it's not affecting the company at all.
Well, it is affecting the company, but as it says, it's not costly, it's not inefficient, it's not unsafe, and it doesn't impact his co-workers' rights in a negative way. So what if my religious belief was I cannot and should not shower or use any kind of deodorant because my human body is so sacred that it must be allowed to be itself without any kind of interference. And I work outside in the sun all day. What's going to happen very quickly?
Yeah, the workers are not going to want to work with you. So
no one's going to work with me. Okay? Now, what if I was working in a butcher shop or in a hospital and I had that religious belief, I cannot wash my body. It is not appropriate to use soap or anything else because I earn the sweat of my brow. Would that be a legitimate religious expression?
No, not really, because then you're putting like the safety of others at risk.
Okay, it would still be a legitimate religious expression, but the hospital, if I was working at a hospital, could not allow me to work there because of safety impacts. Okay? Let's say, for example, that I worked in a lumber yard and I refused to wear a hard hat and steel-toed boots because I'm supposed to expose myself and I'm not saying these in lighthearted ways. Please understand that. I have a deep, deep personal belief and I respect the beliefs of others. But if I was to believe that that anything that happens to me is because of a lack of faith, therefore I should not try to protect myself because my faith in God would protect me. Okay, so I refuse to wear a hard hat. I refuse to wear a jacket, you know, a safety jacket. I refuse to wear steel-tip boots. Is that a fair expression of religion?
Well, you have the right to practice your religion, but when it becomes a safety issue, you have no right to a job. And so that, at that point, because hard hats are required and vests are required, these things are required by OSHA and other government-run entities.
Okay.
But like, you lose that right, you forfeit your right to that expression in exchange for that work.
Okay, kind of. You lose the right, you do not have the right to expose the business to the consequences of your religious. It's not that you lose religious protection. Maintain the right expression. What happens though is the company is not required to permit that expression at its own liability. Okay? So it's the exact same thing. I have to, so Arif wants to pray 5 times a day as a part of his religious belief. He needs time to be able to go and offer those prayers during work time. Okay? What if I was to say that in order for me to pray, I can only pray within the synagogue or building, so therefore you have to let me leave the premises, travel to my holy site and pray before I return? Is the company required? Because it's costly and inefficient. It's not that you can't do it, it's just that they are not obligated to honor that request. Okay? All right.
Yes, definitely after you kind of explained it a little bit more, it was a lot more clear to me on why. But because I was just thinking, oh, he's going to go, because like the Muslims in that case study that we were doing, how they had to go outside however often they needed to pray. I thought it was kind of like that, where he just had to go outside, do his little prayer for like 10 minutes, and then go back inside and work.
I don't know. My example was not supposed to be an illustration of the video that we're talking about. But the question is, and I go back to the example of the person who says, washing my body dishonors the work that I do, therefore I cannot wash, I cannot use deodorants or perfumes. I am supposed to, if I work hard, I should stink because it's the sweat of my brow is how I'm supposed to eat my bread, right? So do I have to let that person work in my place? That becomes okay. Now, the reason why this is a relevant question, the example that I just gave was pretty extreme. But I don't know if you guys remember, this would probably have been, back in like 2012, 2016, I can't remember. There was a clerk of the court in, I want to say it was Kentucky or Tennessee. The state voted to allow same-sex marriage. Couples brought in the applications to get their marriage license, and she said, I will not approve these because my religious belief does not allow for same-sex marriage. Therefore, even though I am a clerk of the court, my religious belief does not allow this, therefore I will not honor this. That's where we get into difficulties with the right of religious belief and religious expression and the operation of businesses, both private and public. I'm not going to get into that because I'm not an attorney, and I cannot, for the life of me, be able to explain what is or not appropriate interpretation of the law. But this is where we get into the ethics of how do we negotiate differences in religious belief and religious expression. All right. Let's see. I think Porter, you already went, didn't you? Porter? All right. Andrew, you're up.
Could I do number 16?
Number 16. Okay, go for it.
So which of the following statements holds true for the concept of duty to gratitude? And that would be E. It refers to the duty to thank and remember those who help us, which kind of just goes back to the dutiful obligations of others.
All right, yeah, this idea that these are these annual or perennial duties, Andrew?
Definitely perennial.
Okay. How does this idea that there is a duty to gratitude, how does that fit into the entire concept of ethics?
I would say, I mean, this is kind of my personal default, but I always go back to virtue, the virtue approach with what you value. And to me, I personally value gratitude, especially for those who help you out and, and you at least, show thanks and remembrance of what they did for you and appreciation almost.
Okay. All right. And that totally works as virtue ethics. These are incredibly important in terms of virtues. But I would also say, remember, the concept of ethics is how do we arrive at decisions? And so any decision we make should satisfy these duties. Is the decision I'm about to make showing proper respect to the duty to honesty? Am I telling the truth and the whole truth if I do this in this way? Okay? Am I showing a duty to gratitude? Am I showing proper respect and appreciation for the people that gave me the opportunity to make this decision? These are how I can tell if I'm making the entire concept of these duties to others. This is how I can determine if I'm making a good choice. So the duty to ourselves. Is this decision likely to help my future self? Is the action I'm taking now likely to improve my life down the road? Or like, hold on a second. Like Kaysen said, am I learning, no, it wasn't Kaysen, it was Zach. Am I learning how to do this job so that I can train other people well? That's going to help me decide, should I do this thing or not? Should I sign up for that extra training module? Okay? That's how this fits into ethics. It's how we make a decision and how do we judge or weigh which decision to make when they are unequal. Okay? All right, Cattell?
Yes. How about 52?
Number 52.
Okay. What are the characteristics of rights? And there's two of them, universal and equal. The fundamental rights don't transform as you move place to place or as you age. And then the equal would be that they're the same for all, men, women, young and old, any color, we're all the same. Did you hear that?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, no, so the idea of universal is these are rights that are existent regardless of location, regardless of identity. Equal rights say that they have to be applied the same way to all, that they cannot be exclusive. Okay, so I think, Tanner, were you saying that you're just pro Second Amendment all day? I'm trying to figure out what that pro 2A all day, I think that's what that means. Okay. All right, but yeah, so the idea of the characteristics of rights. Now, the book talks about positive and negative rights. What are positive rights? Anybody? Anybody tell me what a positive right is? The next question, number
Yes.
53.
What are positive and negative rights?
Yep. Can anybody describe or explain what that concept means? Positive and negative rights.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically inaction or action.
Okay, so positive rights are rights that should be enforced or people should contribute to. So, for example, I have the right to an education in the United States. Any child has the right to an education. What does that mean? If that's a positive right, everybody else is expected to help that right to occur. Can anybody give me an idea, an example of how education becomes a positive right? We talked about this earlier in class today. Taxes. Okay, we assess property taxes because in order for that right to take place, everybody has to contribute. We have decided as a society, the way to do that is to levy taxes on property as a way to guarantee that we will be able to provide education for everybody. Now, the opposite of that is a negative right. What is a negative right?
Like fundamental?
Nope. A negative right is the exact opposite of a positive right. If a positive right says that I have a right to something, a negative right would mean that I have the right to be free from something or to be protected from something.
Not to interfere with me.
These are things that you should not interfere. So, for example, freedom of religious expression is a positive or negative right?
Negative right.
It's a negative right. You cannot restrict my religious expression. It's not that I have to help, support, or pay for it. It's just I cannot restrict how you do it within certain limitations. Positive rights are my right requires you to help me to do things. So, for example, the American Disabilities Act, the ADA Act, positive or negative rights?
Negative.
Partially, you cannot discriminate against me because of a disability, but in a lot of cases, it's a positive right. Meaning, if you're not going to discriminate against my disability, that means you have to make everything accessible. You have to contribute to make sure that there are elevators in buildings that have more than one floor. If I'm in a wheelchair, I can't climb the stairs. Okay? If I'm blind, you have to put down those crenellated discs on intersections so that I know where okay? And I got to tell you a story about this because about, let's see, it's 7 years now. My wife went to the blind school, the state school for the blind in Boise. Okay, she had had this condition that she's had since she was 14, but she finally decided it was time for her to learn how to live blind. One of the things they would make her do is they would have mobility classes. She would have to wear a blackout mask. They would give her a cane and then they would take her, and I don't know if you know where the blind school is in Boise. It's about 2 blocks away from the state capitol building. Downtown Boise. And she would have to use this cane and walk around on the sidewalks of downtown Boise. And they would have somebody who could see, follow her about a block away to help her, navigate and stuff like that. They didn't shut down traffic. She had to learn to navigate with all of this traffic. So when we came up to pick her up and bring her home, the school decided to put my kids and I through the same training that my wife did. So they put me out on the street with a blackout mask and a stick. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you're walking and you know that there's maybe a foot and a half of grass between the edge of the sidewalk and the curb, those cars sound a whole hell of a lot closer than you think. And you're sitting there and your cane's sweeping back and forth and you're walking and you know that at some point I'm going to be getting to the edge of this street and I keep going and the cars sound closer and closer and all of a sudden when I'm thinking I've got to be out in the street by this point, you hear that little rumble, that little kind of rumbling sound of your cane hitting the strip. You realize you're pretty freaking close to traffic that's going 35 miles an hour and they're not slowing down. So my point in telling that story is the ADA is both a positive right, you need to, or a positive and a negative right. Negative right, you cannot discriminate against me. Positive right, you have to provide goods to make things accessible so that I won't need discrimination. Okay, sorry, I went off track on that one a little bit. But I will tell you, yeah, it scared the crap out of me trying to do that. All right, Josh.
Number 49.
Number 45?
49.
49. Okay, go for it.
The Holocaust was the genocide of approximately 6 million European Jews and millions of others during World War II, a program of systematic state-sponsored murder by Nazi Germany, led by Adolf Hitler throughout Nazi-occupied territory. The death of the Jews serves as an example of violation of C, the right to live, or right to life.
Right to life. Okay. Government policy should not, as a intentional end, say that certain people will be put to death simply for existing. Okay, excellent. Okay, Caden, I hadn't forgot you. Caden, are you with us? Caden, going once. Caden, can you hear me? Caden, going twice.
Hello?
Yes, I was going, dude, I know you're there.
I know, my headset, I had to plug it in. I was trying to hurry, sorry.
You're all good. All right, what question would you like?
Well, honestly, everyone's answered what I've had so far. Did anyone do number 18?
Number 18, let's see. No, I don't believe so.
Okay, cool. Let's do that one then.
Okay.
Which of the following statements holds true for the concept which of the following statements holds true for the concept of duty of beneficence? And I said beneficence. Yep. Sorry. I said D, it refers to the duty to promote others' welfare so far as it is possible and reasonable.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly it. And again, the idea of duty says anytime I'm making a decision, it is my job whenever possible and as much as it is reasonable, my decision should promote others' welfare, not just my own. Okay, excellent. All right. Very nicely done, folks. Give me just a second. Okay, so we've got two more things that I want to do just really quickly. First of all, Okay, get down here. Yeah. All right, so first of all, we have number 4, Kaysen.
I think that was section 1 to 10, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, you're right. It is set 1 to 10. Thank you for pointing that out. Kaysen's going, nope, that's good. It's good.
Count it.
Okay, so question number 1 is 19. All right, so that's Caden. And
Wow.
And Jack.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so that's the one thing I wanted to get taken care of. The other thing that I want to get taken care of is, if you haven't already, just out of, hold on a second. Get this out of the way. Up at the top of the course, you're going to see the Business and Support Services BAS eval. That is our course evaluation for this semester. Okay, and I think I've talked about this, but I'd like to remind you. It is very important for me that everybody complete a course evaluation. Primarily because my plan is for the fall, I'm handing this course off to another instructor. I want this class to be as polished, as sharp, as ready to go as possible for other students, because this will be the first time that other instructor is teaching it. So any feedback you can give me about how to improve this class is critical for me professionally, so that I can put my best foot forward for other students. Okay, so with this, what you'll do is you'll just click on the link. You'll go to answer the questions, and then you'll just fill this out. This is what we call a Likert scale, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. You're going to go through the various comments. This is helpful to me, but the biggest thing that is of the most use to me is the most effective aspect of the course was, the least effective aspect of the course was. So if there's anything you particularly liked or anything you really hated, it's easier for me to understand that if you just put this in words rather than putting it on a scale. Okay? I will not see individual results. Everything is sent to the secretary, who will put everything in a blind report. I will not see any of this until after the class is over. Your final grades will be submitted. There is no option for retribution for negative scores in your evaluation. Okay? You can say what you want, what you think, without any possibility of me taking it out on anybody. But it becomes very important for me to be able to get insights into how I can improve this class or what worked. So please take some time and complete this. It takes about 2 to 5 minutes max, but it would be very, very helpful to me. Okay? All right, that's everything I've got, unless anybody else has anything they want to bring up.
Dr. Lambert, I might have one quick question for you.
Okay.
So as far as the ethical dilemma write-ups go, I know that you said you were going to take the top best 8. Is that still correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. I think Moodle currently has the 4 highest values to be taken, but I thought I'd just make sure with you.
Yeah, it's the top 8. I changed it to the top 4 just because of midterm. And
okay.
I could get the midterm grade set. And so I'll go back and change that. But thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, thank you.
Although I know everyone's hoping, man, if he only chose 4, oh. Yeah, I can't do that. I have to stick with it. All right, anything else? Okay, everybody have a wonderful day, and we will see you all on Thursday.